it's kind of like your soul awakens and brings in all of this light. And then all of the light that you are shining inside of yourself starts to shine on everything. So your shadow parts start to show, the relationships in your life start to show, every part of themselves, the habits and subconscious beliefs and your family patterns and your childhood trauma, it all starts to come out when you dive really deep into this world of spirituality and wanting to be the highest version of yourself.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Alexis Williams Show. This is my area on the airwaves where I get to share with you all things related to designing your life by your soul and living in your highest potential. The guests that I bring on are all visionary change makers in their industry that are disrupting the status quo and paving their own way.
Hey guys, I hope you've been having a great week. It is Friday night and I am sitting in the corner of my mom's room because we've been spending March break here and this is the quietest area of the house. So I'm kind of just tucked away in a little corner. And I was supposed to record a podcast with another lovely lady tonight, but we were having some technical issues. And her and I are rescheduling. So I thought I would take this opportunity to do a little about me and get to know each other a little bit more. So for those of you who don't know me, I am a life coach, spiritual counselor, Reiki master, astrology and tarot reader. And I've been doing this work now for about 10 years, maybe a little bit more. A lot of people ask me, how do you get into the industry of spiritual counseling? Because that's really how I dove in, was all through spiritual work. When I was about 18, I was going through a lot of changes in my life and I started to have a lot of anxiety and I started to have a lot of different thoughts about death. I started to become very afraid of dying and it kind of started to come out of nowhere. I was just felt like I was going through this existential crisis where I started to really understand and realize the fragility of life. And you know how they say ignorance is bliss. But the more knowledge and awareness you start to accumulate, the more things you know, and the more things that come into your awareness and into your mind. So when I was 18, I started to develop this constant thought of the meaning of life and what happens when we die. Where do we go? How is it possible that all of a sudden everything you've been working towards is just over? It was causing me anxiety a little bit here and there. And then I remember it was around Halloween. And I went to watch the movie Quarantine at the time. It was in the theaters. And ironically, it was called Quarantine. And it's a pretty much a movie about people getting infected in this. I think it was a house or a hospital. And you're trying to escape the house so that you don't get bit by the other zombies and infected and all this stuff. But for some reason, it just triggered something in my brain. And I left that movie theater having the most anxiety I've ever had. And following that, twice in that week following watching that movie, I had 2 panic attacks. And one of the panic attacks happened while I was driving. And I had to pull over on the side of the road. And I remember calling my mom and I was just like, I need you to talk to me. I need you to calm me down. I'm having a panic attack. And I hadn't shared with anybody that this had been happening to me. She said, what's going on? And I told her, I explained to her everything that I'd been feeling. And she said to me, maybe why don't you try going to church or kind of turning to religion to feel better or find the answers that maybe I needed to calm my brain or my mind around the experience of death. So I did. I started to research different. So I'm Catholic. I was baptized and raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school my whole life. But even when I was in Catholic school, I never fully resonated with the organized religion aspect of it. It's not necessarily that I rejected all of the teachings, but I didn't agree or resonate with the organized, structured aspect of it, with all of the rules and the concept of punishment and original sin just did not resonate to me, even from a very, very young age. Like, I remember being about 5 or 6, and I was already having these thoughts about religion when I was learning about Catholicism in school. It just didn't feel very free for the soul. And of course, I'm not judging anybody who finds comfort in their religion or Catholicism. I believe that your faith and whatever you believe has to be there and present in your life to bring you the most comfort and peace to your soul and your mind. And so for some, that is adhering to one religion. And to other people, it is taking different aspects of different religions and making it their own. And to other people, it is using spirituality in different ways. And for others, they're atheists and they don't believe in anything, or they don't believe in God, I should say. So getting back on track, I started to dive into different religions and what they were teaching on the concept of death. And this is where I started to learn about reincarnation and past lives and all of that. One of my favorite places in the entire world is pretty much any bookstore. So when I'm having a really stressful time, I will find myself at a bookstore. I find it very calming. I find a lot of comfort there. So I was going to the bookstore more often. And for the first time in my life, I wandered into the self-help section. And I picked up a book by Gabrielle Bernstein called Add More Ing. And I just started reading it there in the bookstore. I purchased it, took it home, and I looked her up on YouTube and I started binge watching all of her YouTube videos. And it was the first time I had found somebody who was talking in a way and in a language and using verbiage that really, really resonated with my soul and made so much sense to what I believed, and started to explain life in a way that created some structure and form to all of these thoughts that I didn't even realize I had been having since I was a very young child. I started reading a lot. So I found Gabby and I started going back to the bookstore more and more into the self-help section. I started purchasing books on the soul and spirituality, and my best friend started to get really into Gabby too. And we found out that Gabby was coming to Toronto. I'm pretty sure she was speaking at the Spoke Club. And we went. We were so excited. We made a whole date out of it. I'm pretty sure we went to dinner beforehand. We ate some good Italian food, if I remember correctly. And we went. We saw Gabby speak. She signed our books. She answered all of our questions. By this time, Spirit Junkie hadn't come out, I don't think. We were still on Add More Ing, which was her first book. And one of the people who organized this event was named Krista Rialba. And when there's just those nights or moments where your life, if you look back in time, was just never the same. And when I was thinking about recording this podcast, I was thinking about those moments. Like, what am I going to share? That was a really pivotal moment for me. And it really was this night. My life took a completely different trajectory after I met Krista. Krista is this beautiful, spunky firecracker woman. And she is just so full of life. And I just knew from the very first moment I met her, we clicked instantly. And I said to myself inside, I want to be around this energy. I just want to be around her in whatever way is possible. And at the time, and she still is now, Krista was working for a company called Usana, which is a network marketing company that sells nutritional supplements and skincare and their products are just amazing, amazing, amazing. And to make a really long story short, I ended up joining Usana so that I could be around Krista's energy, and she began mentoring me, and very, very quickly we became the best of friends. So she brought me onto her network marketing team. I started getting really into health and fitness, really into supplementation, and I started to take care of my body on a whole other level. But not only my body, my mind. The amount of self-development I did in those next 2 years was wild. And it was great. It was so good for me at that time. By the time I met Krista and I got into USANA, I was almost at the end of my university degree. And I was really trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life afterwards. That summer, so I met Krista in about fall. And then that summer, I was going through some other things that I was really looking for support with. And I was thinking about talking to a therapist. Krista recommended to me that I get an intuitive reading done. And my mom is half Italian. And so you kind of, in that culture, there's things that people can be very superstitious about, like the don't do the Ouija board and all that kind of stuff. And so when she recommended that I do an intuitive reading, I was a little bit apprehensive. Where she's like, no, have a reading with this girl. She's in Windsor, and at the time I was living in Toronto. She'll do it for you over the phone, and I think it'll be really amazing for you. So I took her number, I kept it for a few weeks, and sure enough, I ended up contacting her, and I had a reading with her. And it was another life-changing moment. It just resonated with me so much. She explained so many things that I was going through, and she gave me great guidance on what I had to do going forward. So I started to develop a relationship with this intuitive reader in Windsor. And over time, I also developed a really great relationship with her. We started working together. And fast forward a bit, I continued to do Usana. I traveled with Usana to Salt Lake City. We did a lot of different conventions in Montreal, in Toronto, all kinds of things. It was a really amazing experience. And then simultaneously, I continued to work with this intuitive reader. And instead of giving me readings all the time, she started to spiritually counsel me. So rather than going the route of a therapist or a psychologist, I ended up taking on a spiritual counselor to my support team. And the way that she explained things to me and the comfort I was receiving from this way of counseling was so life-changing for me. It was a very fast decision, and I said, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to help change people's lives in this way. And so she took me under her wing, and she started to teach me how to be a spiritual counselor. So from about the age of, I want to say 21, 22 is really when I started to dive headfirst into the world of mysticism and spirituality and anything that had to do with the soul and how the soul works and what we're doing here as humans, the ascension process we're going through, how to raise your frequency and vibration, how to manifest, how to download and receive your own intuitive guidance, how to read tarot cards, how to do astrology, all of that stuff, all of that magic. I just couldn't get enough of it. And after that, I continued to have her mentor me, and I began to take on clients. I started doing intuitive readings. I started doing counseling for people, and the impact that I was having was just really beautiful and really great. So while I was taking clients, I was finishing my university degree, and I was working two jobs at the time. And then when I graduated university, I spent about another year in Toronto. And I ended up moving to Windsor to work underneath her as my mentor. So I lived there for another year and a half. She continued to teach me for about 9 months out of that time. And then my time in Windsor ended and I came back to Toronto for a minute. And then I went and lived in Ottawa. I did a bit of time in Ottawa, which was amazing. And then I came back home to Toronto. Like in that time I just talked to you about in those 2 minutes, I'm fast forwarding about 5 or 6 years. But I wanted you guys to really understand and know how this journey started for me. And in those 5 or 6 years that I kind of just glazed over, I really went through some dark night of the soul moments where it's kind of like your soul awakens and brings in all of this light. And then all of the light that you are shining inside of yourself starts to shine on everything. So your shadow parts start to show, the relationships in your life start to show, every part of themselves, the habits and subconscious beliefs and your family patterns and your childhood trauma, it all starts to come out when you dive really deep into this world of spirituality and wanting to be the highest version of yourself. And when you're trying to be the highest version and the highest potential of your soul, that means that there is no room for illusion or lying. This way of being forces you to be 1,000% honest with yourself. And it's not always pleasant. A lot of the time, it can be very uncomfortable. And you can either suppress it and ignore it, or you look at it straight on and you just do your best to have as much support around you and have a great toolbox of things that you can use for your mind, for your soul, for your body. In that time that I was living in Windsor, I learned a lot about what it means to give your power away to other people and think that teachers and gurus, or whatever you want to call them, or your leaders, know more than you. And what I learned about myself in that time is that even though there are people in this world who, yes, have more experience, yes, they've done more certifications and courses and read more books and all of that good stuff, it still at the end of the day does not mean that they know their soul better than yours. And so after I had my experience in Windsor, which I'm very grateful for because I love the person that I am today, and I would not be the person I am today without that time of my life. But what that experience with my mentor taught me is that at the end of the day, nobody knows your soul better than you. And your personal power is more important than anything else, than pleasing any other person. And that is really the ideology that I bring forward when it comes to coaching, mentoring, counseling my clients is, how do we take away or transmute whatever is holding you back from your greatest potential and expressing your personal power in the best, most confident way, the most expressive way, the most freeing way. The way that I coach and I mentor is not me talking to you like I'm the best or I'm better than you. I am here to guide you and walk beside you. I'm only here to facilitate your soul's fullest expression. And that's really what I wish for everybody. I think that this society really adheres to a lot of the identities we think we should be, or how we should be, or when it should be. There's a lot of timeline. We adhere to a lot of timelines. By a certain age, we should be this or have this. But what this world is missing is a lot of uniqueness. I don't feel like a lot of people express who they truly are on every level, with vulnerability, with no inhibitions, especially women. And that's where my passion in helping women and guiding women and women in leadership and powerful positions really comes from. I come from a family of very strong women. I come from a beautiful family where all of the women in my life have had a hand in raising me. And I've just been determined over this past decade of my work to use all of the knowledge and strength and wisdom that I've witnessed in these women. And then in the other women I've met along my life, friends, other mentors, other coaches, and just really pouring it into the clients that I'm blessed to have come and be with me along the way now. So that's a little bit, I summed it up a lot, but that's a little bit of how I got to where I am today. And I hope it gives you some insight and some understanding of the way I operate, how I do my job, why I'm so passionate about my work, because this work is unlike anything else. It requires so much of you, not only on a professional level, but on a personal level, because you have to make sure on a personal level, if you're trying to be a really amazing coach, counselor, mentor, that you are holding yourself to the same level of accountability that you're holding your clients to. And so it's just a really great industry. It's growing, it's booming. And yes, I call myself a life coach, but at the end of the day, I'm really here to change, transform your soul into the most unique and original version of who you are and who you came here to be, because that is what the world needs, your divine spark. Lots of love.
Thank you so much for listening to the Alexis Williams Show. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram at Alexis Candice Williams and on Twitter at the Alexis W. And you can check out all the links and resources in the show notes below. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.